Welcome to Multiculturalism and Migration Observatory Seminar. Warm greetings from our center, CASPAR, Center for Advanced Studies of Population and Religion at Cracow University of Economics. My name is Jan Brzozowski, and together with Konrad Pędziwiatr, we have an honor to chair this webinar on COVID pandemic and immigrant entrepreneurship. Today we have gathered 4 distinguished scholars who represent 4 different European economies, namely from Germany, Aki Harima, from University of Bremen. Aki, can you just wave in the window? Okay. From Italy, Daniela Bolzani, who represents University of Bologna. Daniela.
Yes, hello.
From Croatia, Ružica Šimić Banović from University of Zagreb.
Hello, everybody. Dobar dan.
And from Poland, Katarzyna Andrejuk from Polish Academy of Sciences, Institute of Philosophy and Sociology. Kasia? Okay. So just a few technical remarks. Each of the speakers will have 20 minutes for the presentations. Then the audience will have an opportunity to ask questions. If you have already, during the presentation, some questions, please write them down on a chat window, so then we can gather your question. And then you will have the opportunity to ask in person with your camera switched on. So now the cameras of all the guests are turned down, but when you will be asking questions, you will be visible. Another issue, we are recording this webinar, so if you do not want to be seen, please turn your video off. And a very short introduction on my side. Why this topic is important? Because obviously COVID pandemic is affecting all of us, and the economic recession would surely hit most of European countries and societies. And why we should pay special attention to immigrants, in particular immigrant businesses. Well, there are at least 4 important reasons for that. Because, of course, foreign-born individuals account for a significant share of EU population. Second, they exhibit usually in most of the host countries higher entrepreneurial propensity than natives, so they are more represented among entrepreneurs. They account for a significant share of a small and medium-sized enterprise sector. But at the same time, some of them in many host countries account for really large businesses. Just few examples as Yahoo or Tesla, who have been founded and still are run by immigrants. And the most, I think, interesting case is that in previous crises, of course, this crisis is completely different. Migrant businesses were able to react more positively to abrupt changes. And they were able to survive in very difficult situations, mostly due to solidarity within ethnic networks. So it would be really interesting to learn from their experience how to cope with this very difficult situation also for native businesses. So now this is all on my side from the perspective of introducing the topic. Now we will start with our first speaker. Let me introduce Aki Harima, who is a postdoctoral researcher and lecturer at the chair of small business and entrepreneurship of University of Bremen. Her research areas include transnational entrepreneurship, transnational entrepreneurs in entrepreneurial ecosystems, and refugee entrepreneurship. Her most recent publications include papers published in Journal of Entrepreneurship and Innovation in Emerging Economies with Thomas Baron is on transnational entrepreneurship, and paper in entrepreneurship and regional development this year with Jörg Freiling and Jan Harima on transnational entrepreneurs, and edited book last year on refugee entrepreneurship together with Sibyl Heidbrunn and Jörg Freiling, published by Springer. And she's also involved in a very interesting for us project, Erasmus Plus, which is devoted to refugee entrepreneurship, which is called VIFRE. So Aki, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So let me share the screen. So I hope everyone can see my screen. So hello everyone. My name is Aki, and thank you very much, Jan, for organizing these great opportunities where we can exchange ideas of this interesting and ongoing topic. I would like to present how migrant entrepreneurs can possibly turn challenging situations into entrepreneurial opportunities. Practical relevance is clear. It's a pandemic which affects the world economy tremendously, which also changed the circumstance drastically for entrepreneurs. And particularly COVID-19 can severely affect migrant entrepreneurs because they conduct business with the transnational dimensions by being embedded in two or more national contexts. It's also relevant for entrepreneurship researchers. Looking at all the social media and journals and so on, we see a lot of discussion going on, and it's surprisingly intensive discussions. Some papers already published in renowned journals. We see a lot of special issues coming on this topic, and we have a lot of webinars on this topic. So we see both practical and research relevance on this topic. On the left side, you see the practical relevance, particularly for immigrant entrepreneurs, that it's an economic downturn not only in the host country, but also in the home country, which also limits the transnational mobility of entrepreneurs, that they can't travel between different countries, which also limit the transfer of certain resources, and this possibly deactivate human, social, and financial capital. For research relevance, we have problems with the lack of knowledge of the situations of immigrant entrepreneurs who are facing facing during the pandemic. We see that entrepreneurship scholars are generally conducting intensive research efforts to investigate impact of COVID-19, but we still know little about how migrant entrepreneurs react during the pandemic. So I have three aims of this presentation. First, to share first empirical insights of migrant entrepreneurs in the time of COVID-19. Fortunately, I had some chance to talk to entrepreneurs and support organizations about this topic in the last few weeks. So I would like to share some insights, and then to explore possible chances and challenges that emerged during the pandemic for them. And finally, I would like to develop practical and research implications. So you see, it's not the Olympic rink. I would like to show the different types of migrant entrepreneurs, because there are different types, and I can't talk about all of the 5 groups, but just 2 of them. So I listed up different types of migrant entrepreneurs. Ethnic entrepreneurs is most common and conventional form of migrant entrepreneurship, those who relying on the ethnic enclaves and capitals to conduct business. And then we have transnational entrepreneurs who create business by combining resources in different countries. Returnees entrepreneurs are those who spend substantial time in host countries and then go back to the home country and conduct business. Diaspora entrepreneurs are those who are in the host country but do business for home country. And then we have refugee entrepreneurs, those who are forcibly displaced. Now, for this presentation, I would like to focus on these 2, transnational entrepreneurs and refugee entrepreneurs. So I would like to start with the refugee entrepreneurship. As you most probably know, that Germany has a big issue with refugees, as we are one of the major host countries of refugees in the world. We have received about 2 million asylum applications between 2014 and 2019. They are mostly from Syria, Iraq, Turkey, and Afghanistan. And what I want to emphasize is that once they get the official refugee status in Germany, they receive social welfare from the government, including free integration courses, accommodations, and financial support. When I talk about refugee entrepreneurs, I would like to talk about not only about refugee entrepreneurs, but also support organizations, because they are both strongly involved, playing an important roles in this topic. So refugee entrepreneurship, why is it important for Germany? Because since we have so many refugees and asylum seekers, the economic integrations, also socio-economic integration of refugees is a high priority issue for the politics. But at the same time, we shouldn't forget that refugees bring a great entrepreneurial potential. They have entrepreneurial experiences and the diverse resources that are not available to local entrepreneurs here in Germany. At the same time, they also face significant institutional barriers and the lack of resources. And therefore, the support organizations play an important role on this topic. We have both public and private actors who offer support for refugee entrepreneurs. We see a lot of business incubation programs ongoing. And they play a critical role, especially to fill the resource and knowledge gap or institutional gaps that refugees are facing. And they're also accompanying the entire business development process of refugees. So the refugee entrepreneurship are characterized by certain factors, and they're different from migrant entrepreneurs, other type of migrant entrepreneurship. For instance, they have generally limited access to resources in the host country because they are forcibly disembedded from the home country context. Their qualifications are often not recognized, especially in Germany. They have rather small but intensive networks. So we see that they have less contact with ethnic enclaves in Germany. And then they often suffer from psychological trauma. Now, what happens to, or what could happen to refugee entrepreneurs in times of COVID-19? Perhaps COVID-19 can cause additional emotional turbulence. They already have a psychological trauma. They already faced the distress to reestablish their life from the scratch, but then now they face additional stress. And they may face even higher barriers to maintain and build social capital. For them, it's particularly difficult to build the networks in host country without having connections to the ethnic enclaves. And now everything has to take place virtually, so it's more difficult for them to build the network. And the refugee entrepreneurs may receive less public attention and support because public organizations are now busy with COVID-19. But one thing which I can think of, but I haven't validated yet, is since they already have limited access to resources in the host country, they are less engaged in middleman business, unlike migrant entrepreneurship. So the activations of resources in the home country is probably less relevant to them. Now I had one chance to talk to a trainer of refugee business incubator in Germany, and he shared several problems that he is facing at the moment. First, urgent needs to offer virtual solutions. He said that, we need to switch from physical consultation and workshops to the virtual one. But the problem is some refugees do not have technical facilities like laptops and computers, which is essential for giving consultation and workshop virtually. And then generally they are facing an increasing inquiries about COVID-19. So before, their focus was to support refugee entrepreneurs in the legal issues or development of business model and plan. But since now they have to shift to provide immediate guidance about public support for COVID-19. And what is critical is the limited face-to-face interactions that in now individual coachings or informal interactions, these are extremely important for refugees because they have a small network, and support organizations play an important role in their personal network as well. And now these, they can't facilitate physical interactions with them. And similarly, one of the important functions of those support organizations was to bridge refugees to local actors in the entrepreneur ecosystem. Now it is also difficult because they can't organize events and so on. So this was a refugee entrepreneurship, and now I would like to talk about transnational entrepreneurs who's not from, not necessarily from Germany, and who are not necessarily relying on ethnic enclaves. So transnational entrepreneurship, or they are characterized by the following factors. First, they migrate from one country to another, like the other types of migrant entrepreneurs. They maintain business-related linkage with their former country of origin. They travel both physically and virtually between countries and simultaneously engage in two or more socially embedded environments. And they keep critical global relationships to enhance their resource base, and by taking advantage of these resources, transnational resources, they create entrepreneurial value. The relevance of transnational entrepreneurs has been generally increasing in the last few years because of the globalizations, because of circular migrations. It's not anymore that people are traveling from country to A to country B and spend the rest of their life there, but it's more mobile, and it's like circular migration. They have enhanced mobility through technological advancement in the transportation sector, that they can travel much cheaper and quicker, and they can stay connected or with the people in the home country or in other countries virtually and digitally. Now I would like to share one case. Fortunately, I had the chance to talk to one Japanese serial transnational entrepreneur 2 weeks ago, conducted an interview with him, and he shared a lot of insights and experience about his business in times of COVID-19. So as you can see in his profile, he's quite transnational. He was born and raised in Japan. He founded an online payment firm in Hong Kong, Silicon Valley, in Netherlands. And then he also found a company in Japan as well about online advertisement firms, and found virtual currency firms now in Estonia. And he acquired a license for virtual currency exchange also in Estonia. So that's all of the business still exists. He is still operating them, which means that he has been traveling a lot between these countries before COVID-19. Now, what happens to these countries is, as you know, COVID-19 is affecting all of these countries, of course, and which practically make it impossible for him to travel physically between these countries. So I asked him, assuming that he has many problems, I asked him, do you have any challenges? How has COVID-19 influenced your business negatively? And then he surprisingly answered me, no, the COVID-19 hasn't affected my business negatively. So I was surprised, and I was like, okay. So once again, couldn't you think of any negative impact of COVID-19? And he thought, let me think. No, there's no negative impact on my business. So it was kind of surprising me because I was assuming that he should have some negative impacts, but apparently not. And instead he shared many positive impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on his business. Like first things is virtual transnational meeting. Before the Corona crisis, I spent at least 40% of my life on traveling to other countries. After the Corona crisis, no international trip anymore. And it works. Like he didn't lose anything through organizing it. Maybe he gains something because he doesn't have to spend money for it and time. And then the second thing is the new business chance. The second is the refreshed transnational social capital. So he has established social networks in different countries, in different contexts. And he hasn't activated these networks for a while. But now he said that since everyone started using Zoom, I can stay connected with people in other countries much more easily than before. So now he's like having more or less every day a Zoom meeting. It's more like a casual talk with friends and entrepreneurs in different countries. And he can, so to speak, refresh the existing networks. And in these networks, he has seen many business chances which emerged through COVID-19. So he said someone in my Silicon Valley network introduced a guy from Latin America with an interesting idea for the Corona time, and we decided to work together. So he signed a contract, and he hasn't seen this person physically, just virtually, but he trusted the person in Latin America, and then he now started a business officially together with him. An example of the new business chance that he named is, for instance, esports. Just for the information. And then shift in the economic market, it's specific to his business, but he said that the world economy is severely damaged by the COVID-19 pandemic and stock market as well, which enhanced the value of virtual currency. So it's a great chance for him as well. So we saw two different types of migrant entrepreneurs, and totally different setting and totally different impact of COVID-19. And I would like to summarize chances and challenges. So chances, I see that there are new virtual ways to facilitate transnational interactions and resource transfer. Emergence of new business chances. Yesterday I had a chance to talk to the support organization for migrant entrepreneurs in Bremen. And he also said, for instance, that he has received many inquiries from Chinese entrepreneurs in Germany about the import of medical devices like masks or ventilators and so on. Then opportunity to adapt business model like new sales channels and internet and delivery services. But I see a lot of challenges, of course, limited transnational mobility and resource transfer. So the very nature of migrant entrepreneurs to be embedded into different contexts and create entrepreneurial values between these contexts is now difficult to maintain. Temporal deactivation of resources in the home country or other countries. This is particularly relevant to refugee entrepreneurs, but less interactions with support organizations and additional psychological burden. But at the same time, I saw some capabilities that allow entrepreneurs to turn challenges into chances. For instance, general technological capacity is essential for them to shift physical service to digital ones. And not only the basic IT skill, but they need to have the virtual networking skills. So this is the second point, which allow them to identify important people for online, for business online, and they need to be able to build trust relationship without face-to-face interactions. They need to have an optimism, look at the positive side, and identify opportunities that emerged through COVID-19. They need to be able to make decisions rapidly, and the organization needs to be flexible so that they can adapt to the new situation. And overall, they need, of course, entrepreneurial resilience to recover from difficult situations. So this is the last page, implications for research. I want to recommend to investigate both chances and challenges, because we tend to look at the negative side, but it's up to the context and up to entrepreneurs if they can turn the situation into chances or challenges. And therefore, we also need a qualitative insights to explore and identify the capabilities of migrant entrepreneurs. And the researchers need to be aware of different types and institutional settings of migrant entrepreneurs. For practical implications, the migrant entrepreneurs need not only financial support of course, this is most important probably, but they need also emotional networking and technical support. And support organizations now need to adapt their service structure and the way they interact rapidly to the new circumstance, which is of course difficult, but this is something that I learned from the empirical insights. So these are references. Thank you very much, and yeah, wish you stay healthy.
Thanks a lot, Aki. So this is the end of the PowerPoint presentation, yes?
I think so, yes. This is the last slide.
Okay, okay. So I think if you can
turn off.
Turn off, yes, okay. So Aki, many thanks for this very interesting insight and positive, paradoxically. This is very nice to learn that some entrepreneurs are able to see opportunities in this very difficult moment, and also it was really interesting to see the experiences of support organizations. As you have learned, our Task for Com project aims to assist immigrant entrepreneurs, and we are exactly struggling with this. It's not only about research, but we have practical obligations to support new migrants who want to start the businesses. And currently it's a big challenge, but I think with such positive picture from Germany, our group also gets some new energy to basically adapt the requirements to this new circumstances. Okay, now it's turn for our new speaker, second speaker. For those who are listening to the presentations, if you have some questions to Aki, please write them down in chat window, because we will collect all the questions and after Q&A section. So our second speaker is Daniela Bolzani. Daniela is a senior assistant professor at Department of Management at University of Bologna. Her main fields of interest include entrepreneurship development, international business management, immigrant and ethnic entrepreneurship, and she has published many papers on immigrant entrepreneurship and international entrepreneurship in leading journals such as Entrepreneurship and Regional Development, International Journal of Management Review, Small Business Economics, and recently in Journal of Business Venturing. Daniela, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Jan, for this invitation. I think you should see my screen now, right?
Yes, we see your screen.
Yes, so okay. So I was very pleased to get this invitation, and because you know, I'm just writing my monograph about migrant entrepreneurship, and I'm supposed to deliver it very soon. But you know, I'm just writing conclusions. I thought that, you know, this reflection on what is happening now, and the impact of the pandemic could be also a nice way to you know, to test some of the ideas that I just you know, try to develop in this book. I will, you know, like speaking about immigrant entrepreneurship, I think, you know, like Aki did a really great job in showing the diversity of this phenomenon. So when we speak about immigrant entrepreneurship, I usually have, you know, a lot of disclaimers, you know, like type of, you know, clarification before starting. So because I think that this is a painful aspect of speaking about immigrant entrepreneurs. So first of all, what do we mean with entrepreneurship? So this, we know, is a really relevant question that has been discussed for years in academic debate. So entrepreneurs can be innovators, leaders, creator of companies. There is no single definition of entrepreneurship, and we have to really be precise about what we mean. And I think my answer is normally, given the diversity of entrepreneurs that populate this domain of research, I prefer to, simply look at people that establish and run a company and they manage it. And second of all, who is an immigrant? So what exactly is the, the boundaries that define the status of a migrant? Is it a foreign-born individual? Is it a second generation, third generation? It's a member of a diaspora? Is from the EU or from the OECD, or is this from outside those groups of countries? And so why this matters? So there is also, a large, many differences in the way we measure this specific aspect, and therefore, putting all these issues together makes defining and measuring immigrant entrepreneurship quite complicated. And in fact, we have evidence of many different types of businesses, ranging from, founders of Google, Yahoo, in the Silicon Valley, and people dealing with, petty trade businesses, specialized manufacturing in clusters and so on. So of course, people that study this field are very well aware of the super diversity that characterize the domain. So speaking about the Italian landscape, managing all these difficulties, requires some type of decisions. So available data, normally available for public analysis, are based on immigrant owners, which are foreign-born individuals, having being the owners of individual companies. So, and this is a definition that is very common also in the European labor force survey. So they focus on self-employed people. Also many documents released by the OECD and the European Union therefore adopt this definition. So this is most common, but it has some limitations, because we know that individual companies do not include team-based companies, because in a company with many shareholders, then it is in fact difficult to identify whether the company has a immigrant or non-immigrant imprint. So what should we use? Whether the CEO is a foreign national, whether the majority of shareholders are foreign nationals, whether they are only shareholders or managers. So, this makes things really complicated, as you might understand. So the data will show you are just simply based on foreign-born individuals in active individual companies, and the data refer to 2018. What we know about immigrant entrepreneurs in Italy is that they are younger than Italian entrepreneurs. So as you see, they basically belong to younger classes of age. So below 50 years, they are under 50 years old. And the majority of them are working in the service sector, and so compared to Italian entrepreneurs, they are less active in agriculture, so primary sector, and more active, therefore, in manufacturing and services. In Italy, so the percentage of immigrant entrepreneurs is around 15% of the total, individual entrepreneurs in the country, which is a little bit lower than the share of Italian entrepreneurs over over total employment. And the majority of the immigrant entrepreneurs are from non-EU countries. So which are the top sectors where those entrepreneurs work? I think, I think that in many countries we will see this distribution. They tend to be in low value-added sectors of activity most of the time, such as retail, trade, specialized construction. So this is the bulk of immigrant entrepreneurs are found in those sectors, but also they spread out in like restaurants, wholesale trade, personal care, production of clothing, business support services, other type of construction activities, and other type of, like landscape maintenance of building type of services. We will come, so, this sectoral distribution, of course, as you might anticipate, will have different levels of impact, due to the present crisis. It's interesting also to see that, as it happens all over the world, there are, let's say, majority of entrepreneurs from the same nationality, so for each sector. So an example is in retail trade, Moroccan entrepreneur dominate the other nationalities. They are followed by Bangladesh and China. In constructions, we found most of the time Romanians, Albanians, Egyptians, and Moroccans. And in restaurants, it's Chinese nationals normally that do this type of business. The distribution of immigrant entrepreneurship in the country is also of interest, because studies show that immigrants prefer to settle in large urban areas, and this is more prevalent for migrant entrepreneurs than for natives. And the most preferred provinces are, for instance, Rome and Milan. But also, within these cities, the type of businesses and the related nationalities that carry out those activities are differentiated. So, for instance, in Rome, we have a prevalence of immigrant entrepreneurs carrying out trade activities or business services, where in Milan, the landscape is a bit more diversified. We have a lot of construction entrepreneurs, for instance, Egyptians, and many companies active in services, so personal care and business services, and also tourism. This table does not account for the total number of companies in these cities, in these provinces. When we normalize by the total number of companies, the situation is different, and it's interesting to see that actually immigrant entrepreneurs contribute to the vitality of some areas in the countries, such as in Prato, where we have a large cluster dominated by Chinese entrepreneurs operating in the textile and fashion industry. And in Milan, followed then by Florence, Rome, but other cities which are relatively, you know, smaller cities than what we have seen before. So, you know, this to say that actually immigrant entrepreneurship contributes to the, you know, entrepreneurial structure of many places, many also, you know, evenly distributed across the country. So all this, you know, I wanted to show you this data because, you know, I was really wondering what will be the impact of coronavirus on overall this very different companies and their entrepreneurs. So we know that coronavirus virus was really, you know, quite horrible, I would say, in Italy. So we had more than 222,000 cases so far and 31,000 deaths. So the country was the first severely hit in Europe, and the estimates on the impacts of this pandemic on Italian companies are really impressive. So these are the estimates that show that, you know, like without coronavirus, we would have a 2% growth in revenues for companies. Otherwise, depending on you know, base or worst case scenario that is forecasted by Servet, we will have a, you know, a severe decrease in 2020 turnover, and as well in next year turnover. But you know, when actually I look at these numbers, I was really wondering, so why and how should we expect immigrant entrepreneurs to experience different impacts? So is it really the case that these people, you know, will suffer the crisis differently? And if yes, why? So let me give you an example. So, and I think that also the presentation by Aki before kind of showed, you know, like with the example of the transnational entrepreneur, there are some sectors that will actually benefit of this crisis. For instance, you know, all the e-commerce type of activities or ICT related type of trade. There are other sectors that will be extremely, you know, severely hit by the crisis, especially due to lockdown measures. So for instance, the same forecast by Cerved just released in May estimate that restaurants will face a loss ranging from 34% to 50%, you know, depending on the base case scenario where, you know, we will not face lockdown measures and the things will slowly recover up to pre-crisis, up to pre-COVID-19 situation, or a worst case where we will still face lockdowns until basically December. Another sector that has faced, you know, large crisis is the one of personal care and beauty, where migrants are really active, production of clothing, and let's say all the fashion industry. So also there are no estimates about the impact on the retail and on retail and wholesale trade. But, you know, for all the shops that deal with fashion articles, this will be, you know, still the same type of problem. And also we will have a downturn for business support services. So we have -6, -8% annual turnover decrease. So this will basically, you know, like any company belonging to these sectors, immigrant or native alike, will face the same troubles. Okay, so we know that some nationalities therefore will be more affected. So think about the Chinese community. They are most active in restaurants, they are most active in the production of clothing in Prato, for instance. So there will be some communities that will be worse off. Some territories also will be more affected than others. So first of all, we have to say that the distribution of migrant entrepreneurs, as I showed before, is, follows some preferential regions. So first of all, Lombardy, and Lombardy is the most hit region by COVID-19. Followed then by Tuscany, which is not so bad actually in terms of sanitary situation, and Lazio, which is also not extremely, under the sanitary emergency. But so think about, again, the production of clothing and the Chinese community in Prato will be for sure more affected than the rest of the country. And also large cities such as Milan or Rome, where we have a prevalence of business support services carried out by migrant entrepreneurs, will likely face most troubles in, revitalizing these sectors of activities, and the immigrant entrepreneurs, which are part of this, which represent a large amount of entrepreneurs in these sectors. And on top of that, just consider that because immigrant entrepreneurs tend to live in large metropolitan areas, they also face higher costs for instance, rental and, for managing their companies. So, and also, living there. So the lockdown possibly will have a worse effect for immigrants living in large cities, which have a higher cost of living, a higher cost of doing business than those that are spread around, smaller cities and so on. So this is also to say that, when we speak about the effects of the pandemic on immigrant entrepreneurs, we maybe have to reason about what are the characteristics that make immigrant entrepreneurs different, if there are some, than native entrepreneurs. So what I developed is a possible analytical framework. So this is, the first time I present this, and I would like really to have your insights, your opinion about whether this works for you. It makes sense. So, we should consider immigrant entrepreneurship as a multi-level phenomenon. First of all, as all entrepreneurship literature suggests, like we have the individual entrepreneur, the organizational level, and the environmental level that really matters to influence entrepreneurial patterns. And but also, multi-sidedness of immigrant entrepreneurship, of not all the types of immigrant entrepreneurship, but possibly, all foreign-born or diaspora entrepreneurs. So we have a country of residence at least and a country of origin. So what are the possible sources of differentiation between native and immigrant entrepreneurs? So first of all, entrepreneurs, so migrants are migrants, so they depend on a residence permit, and in Italy, at least, if you are, using a residence permit based on your company, you have to demonstrate profits and, success to maintain the possibility to stay in the country. So in my empirical experience with several entrepreneurs, they tend to tell me, I cannot really risk too much. I need to, avoid closing down, because otherwise I will lose my residence permit and all my rights to stay in the country. So also the language proficiency, kind of impacts the way immigrant entrepreneurs might face this emergency. First of all, the understanding of sanitary prescriptions, rules for lockdown, rules for, reopening, which I swear are quite, complicated and different from region to region. And the rules for access to support. So very recently I was speaking with an organization supporting entrepreneurs. They just carried out a survey to immigrant entrepreneurs, and the need for specialized services to understand how to access public support for entrepreneurs was the first need in this moment for them. Then again, social capital. So we know that immigrant entrepreneurs might maintain bonding ties within the community. This might be, on one side, helping them to get also, the type of support, the emotional support that Aki was mentioning before, but it might also be, not so positive if these type of binding ties become a burden. So, for instance, I was speaking with the representative of the international organization in Rome, and he told me that the migrant communities are fearing that because migrants, tend to feel the pressure of sending remittances back home, also in this time, there is a risk of having them getting into debts. Just to maintain their obligations to send remittances back home. And actually, the problem of remittance drop, financial remittances, drop due to the pandemic is actually, something that is really worrisome for many country of origin in this moment. There might be cases instead, we saw this phenomenon back when we had the earthquake here in my region. I think it was 2013, something like that. It might be the contrary. So entrepreneurs of foreign national origins might have inverse access to resources, of financial resources sent from the countries of origin, where still the pandemic is not so strong. So they might access different types of resources than native ones due to co-ethnic or diasporic ties spread all around the world. Again, work or life attitudes and values, possibly the literature has shown that some nationalities of entrepreneurs display different work values and attitudes. So they are more, conforming to tradition. They tend to apply universalism, benevolence in their business rather than only self-financement. So this might be a source of individual differences with natives. Again, look at the organizational level. So what Aki already presented in her presentation is clear. So some of those companies might have access to other markets thanks to ethnic and diasporic ties, so especially markets in the home country. So also here, the IOM representative in Rome was telling me that entrepreneurs from Africa, for instance, in this moment, that maintain transnational ties are not doing so bad, because Africa has not yet stopped, and things are moving, and they still, you know, can do business, even if at a distance. So in this regard, what I see is that due to lockdown measures, there has not been a return of entrepreneurs in the countries of origin, but this is something that we cannot exclude for, you know, the future. So we might face, you know, a drain of entrepreneurs preferring to go back to their countries of origin, where maybe things are, you know, slightly better, or at least they can, you know, access to family support, for instance, or other types of support. And finally, also, as the previous presentation really well identified, we have to be aware of environmental level factors that might be differentiated for natives and immigrants. So we speak about ad hoc measures or policies or programs. So those, for instance, released by incubators or accelerators specialized in migrant services, or nowadays there are many European projects, you know, supporting different types of entrepreneurs in this regard. So, and also from my own research, I saw that entrepreneurs from migrant origins might be nested in different layers of the entrepreneurial ecosystem with respect to natives. And this is very important because they might have access to different, you know, nets of social capital. I think I'm running out of time, Jan?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. So, and all these
1 minute, please. Yes.
Yes, all these differences also matter, you know, to differentiate within immigrant entrepreneurs. So, you know, what I would like to you know, ask you as a final remark is whether also, you know, policies which are addressed to both immigrant and native entrepreneurs should be differentiated. So shall we expect a risk of lower uptake of public support policies for immigrant entrepreneurs in the next months? And most especially if we want to set specific measures to target immigrant entrepreneurs, to which extent we really know this population. And this calls for actually more research and collaboration with policymakers. So I also leave some useful resources in the slideshow. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, Daniela, could you close the, okay, sure, okay. Thanks a lot for such extensive analysis. I know that Italian data on immigrant entrepreneurship is really good. So it was really interesting to see this evolution of and concentration of immigrant businesses between sectors, and this analysis how these different sectors can be affected. So without further delay, because we are slightly running out of time, we go to our third speaker. Ružica Banović, she is representing Faculty of Law at University of Zagreb, Croatia. Her fields of expertise are SME sector, institutional economics, immigrant entrepreneurship, and she has published several papers on institutional context, institutional economics, for instance, in post-communist economics. Ružica, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Jan. Hello, everybody, once again. So unlike Italy, we are not so happy with statistical data on immigrant entrepreneurs. And unlike Germany, we kind of lack support organizations for immigrant entrepreneurs. But still, I do believe that the case of Croatia is relevant and interesting for Eastern Europe and Southeastern Europe in particular. What makes it that relevant, what makes it that important, is the very negative migration saldo in the recent years. And that is what you can see from this latest UN data. The particularly affected regions in the world when it comes to immigrant stock are Western Balkans. And when we talk about the forecasts, we have the Southeastern Europe as one of the depopulation hotspots in the world, according to projections for 2050, which is kind of worrying for us. In addition, our entrepreneurial climate is rather unfavorable. So just like many other new member states in Europe, population in Croatia is rather homogeneous, meaning only 1.3% of our residents are not Croatian citizenship holders. So almost 99 people in Croatia are Croatian citizenship holders. That is why our pillar is that small in this graph. When it comes to more precise data, we can talk about this increasingly negative net migration saldo in the last 10 years, and especially since we joined the European Union. That was kind of expected, but it wasn't expected that it would trigger the brain drain to that extent. And when it comes to immigration, our ratio is below EU 28 average. And you can see the data. I just mentioned the main ones right before. What we did in the recent years, that was one of the major changes when it comes to our administration regarding the job market, was the very high increase in national quota for migrant workers. And that was only because, or mainly because, we had extreme shortage of the workforce. As you could see in this data, in only 6 years ago, we had a bit more than 200 work permits. So I'm talking about the national level for the whole Croatia. In the last year, we issued more than 60,000 work permits, and 50-something% of it was for the construction workers, and then followed by the workers in the tourism, retail, and so on. When it comes to the international protections, we were not that generous. So since the first protection, we had less than 800 international protections granted. So that is why I'm talking, when it comes to all those common denominators with Southeastern Europe in particular, Croatian case is very interesting. In addition, it is interesting for the prospective EU member states, or for the candidate countries. And even though we need foreigners, we need immigrants, most of the Croatian people are not well informed when it comes to the immigration and integration matters. Like more than 80% people in Croatia, according to this Eurobarometer survey, say they're not well informed about the migration issues. But still, most of them do not consider immigration to be sort of an opportunity for the society, meaning, in other words, we don't know much about it, but we kind of know it's rather negative. I just put some screenshots from Croatian media that are mostly negative when it comes to foreign entrepreneurs and foreigners in Croatia. And then there was this, in November, special report on migration from The Economist that, of course, has mostly positive highlights when it comes to various migration issues. So as I said, we don't have statistical data. We had some anecdotal evidence when we started this research on immigrant entrepreneurs in Croatia. So we did a series of interviews with immigrant entrepreneurs and institutional representatives that are either dealing with or are supposed to be dealing with immigrant entrepreneurs in Croatia. We did separated these barriers that entrepreneurs are facing in Croatia into formal and informal barriers. And as you could easily see, majority of these barriers are actually the ones that are also addressed, that are also recognized by the native entrepreneurs in Croatia. So they're not, of course, unique to immigrant entrepreneurs only, but depending on their origin, the list on the origin on the entrepreneurs, the list keeps enlarging. So all those red tape sort of barriers, unpredictability, uncertainty in the business environment or in the entrepreneurial climate issues keep enlarging when it comes to the people that are not from the EU countries, and the list is the longest when it comes to the people that are from the third countries, and these countries are less developed. Let me just mention so you have the idea about how Croatian population homogeneous is. Right now, there's about only 80 people from Africa in the whole Croatia. And like about 10 or 20% of them are actually entrepreneurs. So when we talk about, say, people from Romania, we have only one company that is fully owned by Romanian entrepreneurs, by Romanian couple, and so on. So we are still quite closed, and the idea of the foreign entrepreneurs is not something that is well known to the Croatian general public. I'll come to that, to this list again, emphasizing the barriers that are in a way affected by this latest COVID-19 pandemic. So just for you to get an overall sense of the that is usually mentioned by immigrant entrepreneurs in Croatia, like all of them say that administrative burden is huge, and that combined with the lack of institutional support is a big barrier for them. For some of them, it's not something that cannot be surmounted, but it does make them think why they did choose Croatia as a country to live in and as a country to do their business in. And why they were initially that enthusiastic to invest or think about investing their money in Croatia. So you can see some more quotes. I'll come also back later to those points. And despite all those facts, I'm talking about now before Corona crisis, there's this kind of a big gap in the perception of immigrants and potential entrepreneurs in Croatia. So in the public discourse, you would usually talk about immigrants as the refugees only. That would be an additional attack to our state budget. And also in the most negative terms like criminal increase and so on. Whereas in reality, as you could see on the right-hand side, you have people that are running one of the most interesting and one of the most successful small restaurants in Zagreb and at the seaside. Then you can see Nick Colgan, who is in charge of many famous music festivals being organized at the Croatian seaside, but also in charge of one of the first craft breweries in Croatia. You can see our famous generals from the war veterans that are cooperating with those scarce African entrepreneurs in Croatia, people that produce Croatian souvenirs that have nothing to do by their origins with Croatia, but do live and did choose to come here to start a business, and also the doctors that are the main doctors for some of our best athletes. So that is our reality with immigrant entrepreneurs that are not usually perceived that way. One more thing that we had as a shock and some more aftershocks when it comes to the immigrant entrepreneurs, and not only immigrant entrepreneurs, in the last 2 months. As you probably know from the news, in the first week of our lockdown, we had a very strong earthquake hitting Zagreb. So that is the strongest earthquake in the last 140 years. And basically the center, the old city center, is quite damaged. One of the pictures that was mostly shown in the media is one of the left-hand side as babies, like newborn babies with their moms that are being evacuated from the hospitals, from the city center, and people that are supposed to be keeping social distance, but are actually forced to stand in the middle of the streets just to avoid any possible consequences of the aftershocks of that earthquake. So that is something that, of course, did affect the lives of Croatian people, and mainly people in Zagreb. But in Zagreb, it is about 1/4 of Croatian population living in or around Zagreb. And many of the immigrant entrepreneurs are based here, or their business is affected by the activities going on in Zagreb. It can be felt all over. But let me talk about some good news now. So far, when it comes to the international, to the global benchmarks, Croatia was quite good, like rather good at fighting coronavirus. And as you can see, this is the data from yesterday. It is right now in the group of the winning countries in fighting coronavirus. It also a few days ago, it was featured in the New York Times that the countries such as Croatia, Greece, and other countries that did either deal with war or some financial disasters were kind of better at dealing with corona crisis, because they had this experience of being closed in their own homes or dealing or developing some sort of resilience. And that is something that I'm mentioning also in this entrepreneurial context. Yet, we were good at fighting coronavirus, so we are at the top, but we are also at the top when it comes to the minuses in the forecasts of the GDP growth, according to the European Commission. So Croatia is about to have a negative GDP growth for about, right now it's almost 10% for this year, and next year it's projected that it's going to be the increase of only about 6%. Let me also mention that we were at the EU bottom, and that it took us 10 years to recover from the last crisis, meaning only in the last year we had the GDP level that we had before the crisis in 2008. So that is something, again, that in the matters of context largely influences our economy and the foreign entrepreneurs that came over here. The good thing that was also emphasized by the entrepreneurs that I contacted just to update the information from them in the context of COVID. They said that those generous support measures provided by the government were very supportive for their businesses as well, because they were mainly, especially the restaurants and the retail shops, they were closed for the last almost 2 months. And that they hope it will save them in a way that they won't be forced to close their businesses. But when it comes to the other phase of these measures, it is quite unlikely to happen, because the state budget was quite hit but by those support measures. They are not that as generous as you may think. They're generous in terms of their share in the Croatian GDP, so comparing to other shares in the GDPs of other countries. You can see it later in the presentation, that was also one of the initiatives of mostly immigrant entrepreneurs in Croatia. They were quite happy with the epidemic conditions in Croatia, and they made a video saying thank you to all the people who saved, in a way, our lives and our health in Croatia, and that are in the front line. So most of them are, many of our interviewees are in this video as well. So we do have favorable epidemic conditions, but let me come to the points that I put in bold, that I emphasized. We have usually our regulations in many fields are quite unpredictable. Right now we have shops closed on Sundays, which is the major reason for that, as claimed by the government, was due to epidemic conditions. So that is the first time it ever happened since Croatia gained its independence. At the same time, we have a pre-election period. So for some of the people, they claim that it's a pre-election tool as it is a right-wing government's decision. And we have our travel restrictions are still quite vague, so quite unclear for the tourists that are supposed to come over to Croatia. Most of the immigrant entrepreneurs' businesses are also largely affected by tourism, tourist season success in Croatia. That is why I am like in a way double emphasizing this fact. Then we have huge issues with earthquake reconstruction activities, as Zagreb had this massive increase in tourism in the last year, and it was also considered to be one of the most known weekend breaks in Europe. Now you can't see any more tourists, as you may imagine. So it is also affected with the shops and the restaurants in the city center, and shops, as I said, are now closed on Sundays. And we have many damaged offices, retail spaces, and many other buildings in the center of Zagreb. So right now, when it comes to the informal barriers, if you are a foreigner in Croatia, you may additionally experience this lack of safety net comparing to Croatian people living here, and that sense of increased uncertainty in Croatia. And as I said, but again, I can't stress it enough. In the pre-election period, you can't really expect huge reforms to happen, and there is, in terms of business planning, quite a strong element of uncertainty. Another positive issue, there is not only criticism by immigrant entrepreneurs, but they do really can have a positive influence on our public administration bodies. So Total Croatian News is the major news channel for the foreigners in Croatia. It's basically the only website that regularly publishes all the news in English. And the owner and the main editor is also is an Englishman who lives in Croatia for quite a long time, and he also names Croatia as a kingdom of accidental tourism. A few days ago, they noticed that if you are a tourist and you want to contact our Ministry of Tourism, there is the possibility to contact it either by phone or by fax, by telefax. So they published the article, and the Ministry of Tourism, 2 days after, they really made their website more user-friendly and more accommodated to the new conditions. So they did, the immigrant entrepreneurs' influence was like very positive and very fast again in this case. Another round of good news. The bars in Croatia, and you know, for those of you who've been to Croatia, you know how important bars and coffee shops and restaurants are to Croatian people, but also to immigrant entrepreneurs. These are all the pictures from the immigrant entrepreneurs outlets, mostly from the seaside, but also from the center of Zagreb is the picture on the right-hand side is the tea house of a Chinese entrepreneur in Zagreb. They are open and we are all very, very happy about it. Same as immigrant entrepreneurs and local entrepreneurs, of course. So this is also Korčula, Split waterfront, and so on. And luckily, it is also the perception of the immigrant entrepreneurs. There has been a slight shift in the perception of them in the public discourse. So now, as we as Croatian residents have witnessed some other threats, we kind of forgot that the immigrants are a huge threat or external enemy to us. And there has also been quite a lot of international help in medical equipment. So again, one of the good aspects of the international collaboration. And there is kind of a less focus on immigrants in general, and it makes it in a way more focused on the positive sides happening in our reality. So and you can also see in the media that their business is affected, like all the music festivals are canceled. So that was something that was sort of flagship event in many cities at the seaside and in many small towns and in many islands. So you can feel more empathy to their businesses than you could usually feel it. I'm running, and I really hope, because you said that we are running out of time, I really hope that you can follow me talking that fast. So far we have, despite this rather small ratio of immigrant population and rather scarce population of immigrant entrepreneurs in Croatia, the predominant opinion was rather negative. Right now we have the slight shift. We have new circumstances that I hope will contribute in the long run, not to be focused on the proclaimed external enemies in terms of like immigrants. And we have this other issue and their initiatives to of the immigrants, of the expats in Croatia, to show them being very grateful for the favorable epidemic conditions, and them being grateful for being right now in Croatia and not in their home country, because it would be not as good for them if they were in their home countries. But still, when it comes to their business, their daily and yearly survival, they keep questioning the decisions that I previously mentioned that may negatively affect their businesses in the long run in particular. But of course, as we are in mid-May already, tourist season is the thing that first comes to our mind, especially having in mind that Croatia's GDP is largely dependent on tourism, like almost 1/5 of GDP is made by tourism and related activities. So soon, if we continue this way, soon we'll be like the Maldives. When it comes to the barriers, it is very important to stress again that if we solve part of the formal or informal barriers that are faced by immigrant entrepreneurs, we'll also solve the same ones that are faced by the local entrepreneurs. So it's not something that is that unique to the immigrant entrepreneurs. It is only the thing that their list is much, much longer, and they seem to be more resilient and resistant to all the dangers coming from the outside world to them. And as I mentioned, apart from COVID-19, we had also Zagreb earthquake that did affect our lives and businesses. So thanks everybody. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thanks a lot, Ružica, for this very interesting insight on a country which is yet to become a country of intensive immigration. So the experiences are slightly different than from traditional countries of migration like Italy and Germany. Okay, I already see some questions for you, but of course we will turn to them with Q&A section. Now we have our last speaker to present. Katarzyna Andrejuk is Associate Professor at the Institute of Philosophy and Sociology, Polish Academy of Sciences. In her habilitation, she explored the significance of Ukrainian migrant entrepreneurship in Poland. Her professional interests include multiculturalism, migrations, European Union, and Europeanization. And she has published many papers in such journals as Journal of Ethnic and Migration Studies, Asian and Pacific Migration Journal, Polish Sociological Review, East European Politics and Societies. Katarzyna, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Janek, for your introduction. It is very nice to see you all, to meet you through Zoom. In my presentation, I will speak about the challenges of the pandemic for immigrant entrepreneurs in Poland. And obviously some threads, some topics will be reiterated after the previous presentations, but the situation in all European countries is currently similar. In the recent years, Poland has become the top destination country for labor migrants in Europe. Migrants from post-Soviet states are the most numerous group. Most immigrants choose circularity and various types of contracts, dependent employment, but not all of them. We can also observe a dynamic increase in the number of immigrant enterprises in Poland. I described this phenomenon in my monograph, which was published in 2017 and concerned Ukrainian entrepreneurs in Poland. The most popular sectors among immigrant entrepreneurs include trade, both retail trade and wholesale trade, gastronomy, construction works. Immigrant entrepreneurs in Poland are often inclined towards settlement migration. This happens because permanent legal statuses facilitate self-employment, while at the same time it is more difficult to register a business venture with a temporary status. Moreover, immigrants in Poland often develop family firms which provide employment for various members of a family. This facilitates adaptation and long-term residence of all family members. On the other hand, there have been many problems and hurdles which could make migrant entrepreneurship in the host country more challenging, even in the pre-pandemic times. This included complicated and fast-changing national laws regarding business ventures. Another problem are bureaucratic challenges of employing foreigners in Poland and legalizing their stay in Poland. Poland was on a 40th position in the most recent Doing Business ranking 2020. It fell from 33rd position in the previous edition. This indicates that business activities in Poland gradually become more difficult instead of getting easier. Fiscal burdens become more severe. The minimum wage increased, and as a result, the costs of business activities became higher. How many immigrant enterprises are there in Poland? The data presented here are of March 2020, so the very beginning of the crisis. As we can see from the table, employment and various types of civil contracts are more common among immigrants than business activities, but still there is a huge group of self-employed foreigners in Poland. The most numerous groups of immigrant entrepreneurs are Ukrainians, Belarusians, and the Vietnamese. For people from post-Soviet countries, it is actually easier to conduct business in Poland because of the similarity of languages, the easiness to learn Polish. In addition to that, there are many self-employed individuals from the European Union member states, especially Germany, Bulgaria, Italy. The official data do not show the number of suspended enterprises, but basing on what happened in Poland, we can assume that some business ventures were officially suspended, while other actually stopped operating at all, even without the official formal suspension. So how did the pandemic develop in Poland? On March 14th, the state of epidemic threat was declared in Poland, and just 6 days later, on March 20th, the government introduced the state of epidemic and decided on the country lockdown. The borders were closed for most foreigners, and the border controls were reinstated. Nevertheless, the individuals having temporary or permanent residence permits in Poland or having the card of the Pole, Karta Polaka, still could enter the country, just like the Polish citizens. But the entry to Poland is forbidden, for example, in the case of seasonal migrants. The government decided on the closure of schools, universities, theaters, cinemas, shopping malls, restaurants, and multiple services. International flights and railway connections were also suspended. These measures enabled the reduction in the number of the coronavirus cases, and as of May 13th, the number of cases in Poland remains relatively low, 17,000 cases and 860 deaths. The government decided on the gradual reopening of the country's economy in the so-called new sanitary regime. This began on April 20th. The increasing number of business ventures in various branches can reinstate their activities. And since May, there is a growing regional diversification in the development of the epidemic within the country. Silesia is currently the most affected region. The coal mines were not closed during the pandemic. And at the same time, we observed the decrease of the coronavirus cases in other regions of Poland. How did the state address the problems of immigrant entrepreneurs? The crisis management encompasses both the emergency measures and temporary solutions in the period of epidemic, as well as long-term solutions and economic stimulus package, which aim to resolve the problems of the labor market and immigrant activation. In March and April, a set of regulations were introduced to help entrepreneurs and other economically active individuals survive the pandemic and the crisis. These regulations do not refer specifically to immigrant entrepreneurs, but they are addressed to micro-entrepreneurs, small and medium-sized entrepreneurs, and the majority of migrant enterprises fulfill the definition of small or medium-sized enterprises. So they do qualify for assistance. The self-employed individuals qualify for the assistance if they operate in Poland, if they pay social contributions in Poland, regardless of the citizenship of the owners. I will now explain some most significant solutions of the anti-crisis shield, tarcza antykryzysowa. First, there is waiting time allowance, świadczenie postojowe. This benefit aims at compensating the loss of income from business ventures, from business activities during the pandemic. It may be obtained for up to three times for maximum of 3 months. Second, there is exemption of social security contributions for 3 months. The aim of this solution is to help avoid the reduction of employment in enterprises affected by the crisis. Entrepreneurs may apply for the full exemption in the case of firms up to 10 employees, or partial exemption, 50% exemption in the case of firms up to 50 employees. The anti-crisis shield also enables granting preferential loans to micro enterprises. The obligation to repay the debt may be later annulled. The new economic stimulus package also envisages temporary liberalization of tax regulations. This includes postponement of tax payment deadlines, exemption from prolongation fee for individuals who ask for deferral of tax payments. And the anti-crisis shield also envisaged suspension of procedural deadlines in court proceedings in Poland during the state of epidemic. There are also special solutions addressed to foreigners, not entrepreneurs, but immigrants in general. This is also important from the perspective of immigrant entrepreneurs, because foreign business ventures usually employ co-ethnics. The new regulations include extension of work permits and residence permits for immigrants who stay in Poland during the pandemic. Besides, immigrants are allowed to work under conditions different than those specified in their work permit or in the declaration of entrusting work to a foreigner, so-called oświadczenie procedure, without the obligation to obtain a new permit. Besides, the anti-crisis shield envisaged the extension of time deadlines for leaving the territory of Poland for individuals who were refused residence permits or who were otherwise obliged to leave Poland. And how does the crisis affect immigrant entrepreneurs in general? Generally, crises cause the decomposition of migration flows, decreasing the migration for employment. Besides, crises affect minority groups stronger, leading to a higher increase in the unemployment rate among the immigrants, especially those with low education levels, than among the natives. This is what we may learn from the previous episodes of crisis and recession. Because of the closed borders and even later during the crisis, we can expect the decreasing number of newcomers who are potential customers of ethnic enterprises. Another problem is the absence of short-term and seasonal migrants. Seasonal migrants are perceived mainly as a workforce in agriculture, but they are also present in sectors where immigrant businesses operate. The closed borders, limited possibilities of international mobility may impede the inflow of seasonal workers in the period of more intensive business activities in the summer after reopening of immigrant enterprises. Between one lockdown and another expected lockdown, probable lockdown in the autumn. The lack of seasonal migrant workers may negatively affect not only agriculture, but also other sectors. Another significant change is the growing use of the new intrusive, extremely privacy eroding technologies popularized by the pandemic. It may significantly influence the situation of unregistered migrants or those who work without proper authorization. On the one hand, the transition into the gray zone may become a more frequent strategy chosen by immigrants who lose their official legal employment, but nonetheless want to stay in the host country. This may mean transitions from legal to unregistered work, but also from legal to unregistered business. This contradiction between incentives for gray zone activities and the more intrusive control measures may result in growing new social tensions. Another aspect of the crisis is the possible emergence of more negative attitudes to foreigners. Such change to more negative attitudes was also observed during the previous financial crisis in Europe and the world in 2009. This may also affect entrepreneurs' ability to attract new customers. But every cloud has a silver lining, and even the worst crisis might have some positive outcomes or positive aspects. Immigrant enterprises are often family firms. Such business ventures are more flexible during the crisis and recessions. The venture provides income for the whole family, and there is a higher level of solidarity, higher level of internal trust among family workers. They can adapt more easily to negative changes on the market, for example, by agreeing to temporary work without remuneration. Another positive outcome may be the growing acceptance of the fact that Poland should do more to attract foreign medical staff in order to improve the national health services. Medical workers are often self-employed and in a broader sense, they are also entrepreneurs. There are appeals to speed up and rationalize the administrative procedures of recognition of immigrants' diplomas, of immigrants' degrees acquired in foreign medical schools. And generally, necessity is the mother of invention. So in the crisis, the crisis may result in innovation in various areas of social life. Entrepreneurs, migrant entrepreneurs have to implement new solutions during the pandemic. This encompasses the use of new technologies, online social life, automatization. Some of these solutions will definitely remain a part of our activities in the future after the crisis. Another positive aspect is that according to the current estimations by the European Commission, Polish economy will be relatively less affected by the pandemic and crisis in comparison to other European Union member states, especially Mediterranean states. To sum up, I would like to emphasize that the crisis exposes the multidimensionality of challenges which are experienced by foreigners in the host country. These problems encompass not only the economic crisis, but also the legal, political, social chaos, exacerbating inequalities, challenges for social solidarity, a change of attitudes towards migrants in the host country. The increasing significance of the nation state, social pauperization, and high unemployment rate may contribute to the emergence of the new patterns of marginalization or discrimination of foreigners, both on the labor market and outside of it. The pandemic influences immigrant enterprises in several dimensions. First, it affects the situation of business ventures in Poland in general. Second, it changes the situation of migrant workers, their ability to be mobile and to come to Poland. Third, it affects the situation of ethnic customers who are often the focus of immigrant enterprises. The coronavirus crisis affects the branches where migrants are represented in large numbers, both as entrepreneurs as well as employees. The anti-crisis shield introduces important measures for immigrants in these branches, but it is doubtful whether such enterprises, for example, in gastronomy or cosmetology sector, will easily return to the previous customer base and pre-pandemic level of income. I do not want to be overly pessimistic, and I want to emphasize that the crisis is also a chance for innovation. Even the migrants who retain their jobs, continue economic activities during the crisis, have to change their habits, routines, have to reinterpret the existing patterns of professional conduct. The crisis may facilitate the emergence of the new phase of transnationalism. I'm speaking especially about transnational entrepreneurship, which takes advantage of resources in both the host country and home country of an immigrant entrepreneur. Transnational entrepreneurship may intensify in the form of virtual activities and electronic communication, but at the same time, the aspect of physical mobility and life in between the countries may be weakened. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Katarzyna, for your very interesting presentation on Poland. We are really interested if migrants in Poland will continue, because we just witnessed that in few years the rapid inflow of immigrants, mostly from Ukraine, and now with this COVID pandemic, there are some concerns that they might not stay definitely in Poland. Okay, now I think we will open a Q&A section, and we will start very quickly with a question directed to Professor Aki Harima by Dobrosława Wiktormach, because I have to excuse our speaker. Professor Harima has a class in 14 minutes, so she's teaching, so she will have to leave the Q&A section. Dobrosława, can you ask your question?
All right, thank you. I hope you can hear me. I couldn't open the video, so I'm just speaking because it was the moderator who chose it. Thank you very much, everyone, for great presentations. So my question will be short and very direct. About Germany, I really like the way you presented the very diverse kinds of entrepreneurships and diversified the groups. So my question would be about the refugee entrepreneurships. Is there any kind of local support presented by local municipalities to this particular group of migrants? So do the refugee entrepreneurs get any support because of the specific difficulties they face and the challenges in which they are currently struggling? So do you know anything about the response of localities in Germany? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. As I mentioned in the presentations, we have lots of both private and public initiatives to support refugees and refugee entrepreneurs. But particularly for the COVID-19, as far as I know, well, like there is no new service, so to speak, but rather the existing organizations or business incubators, support organizations switch their strategic focus on regular business development to giving the information, providing the information about the public support that refugee entrepreneurs can also apply to. So this is what I know. So they do have public support, but not particularly for these situations. And I see that you wrote in the questions such as the lack of access to computers. Particularly to this problem, there's no, well, as far as I know, there's no new service or something particularly for these situations to provide technical facilities to refugee entrepreneurs. But it was actually not the, it was also the situation before Corona pandemic crisis that they, the one problem is that they do not have, or many do not have the technical facility. But this is just one problem. And another problem is they somehow, they're happy to use smartphone rather than a computer, which surprised me quite much because as Jan introduced me in the beginning, I'm involved in an EU project where we developed a virtual platform, business incubation process for refugee entrepreneurs. And we thought that they can look at the slides in with their computer. I think someone is sharing the screen. So in our project, we developed this kind of platform, hoping that refugee entrepreneurs use it with their computer. But then, even though some of them have the computer, but they decided to use smartphone because it's more comfortable for them. So if we provide the technical facility to refugees or refugee entrepreneurs, then not only providing them with computers, but also we need to offer courses and workshop seminars and things like this, where they can familiarize themselves with the usage of computers for the business activities. I hope this is answering to your question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now we have a question to Katarzyna Andrejuk from Olivia. Olivia, could you read your question again?
Yes, of course. So my question, thank you for very interesting presentations. And my question is concerning medical workers in Poland, because this was a very interesting point that the need for medical workers can actually extend this migration from Ukraine especially. And I was thinking about the influence on the problem of de-skillization of those workers, meaning, as far as I'm aware, major problem exists with transferring medical diplomas and other documents confirming qualifications in any field, but also in the medical field. So my question is, do you think this need for medical workers will influence this problem? Thank you.
Kasiu, you need to turn your mic on.
Thank you. You can hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I want to be optimistic here, and I think we have to emphasize that there are appeals in public discourse, in public media to make it easier to recognize medical diplomas from foreign universities in Poland, that we should make it easier to practice medicine in case of immigrants, but also the crisis is always brings the risk of the skilling because it brings the risk of immigrants starting work below qualifications. If immigrants lose their jobs and then they are forced to take up less skilled jobs. So it is absolutely possible that the appeals to make it easier for immigrants to practice medicine in Poland will solve, at least in some aspects, the problem of the skilling, but also the crisis in general brings the risk of the skilling also in other areas of social, of professional life. I also want to say, want to address what Janek said previously about the return migration. It is assumed that in the times of recession and political crisis, immigrants return to their countries of origin due to reduced opportunities on the host labor market. But in fact, this question of migrant strategies is much more nuanced and multidimensional, and I think it was shown in many presentations today. It has to take into account the diversity of individual motivations, the phase in the cycle of life, legal position of a given person. The presence of migrants in Poland is frequently associated with factors other than paid work, or paid work is just one of several reasons why they stay in the host country. Such groups include, for example, students, individuals married to Polish citizens, family migrants, and also entrepreneurs. As I said at the beginning of my presentation, migrant entrepreneurs in Poland are often choose settlement migration. So this means that we should rather not expect return migration. What I'm afraid of is the risk of going to the gray zone with immigrant enterprises. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. And now, as one of the moderators of the meeting, Konrad will have the privilege to ask two questions, actually, not one, two questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jan. Yes, it's me who makes you to mute and unmute and who removes some of the persons who are sharing their screen in a not right moment. Very quick questions because we are running out of time. One to Ružica and one to Daniela. You partially, Ružica, answered your question at the very last moment in conclusions, but Nevertheless, I want to ask this: why pandemic is going to have so negative impact on Croatian economy in comparison to other EU countries? Is strong reliance on tourism part of the answer? This is a question to you and to Daniela. How effective are so far the measures taken by the Italian government to protect jobs? Do immigrant entrepreneurs have full access to these measures? So first, Ružica and then Daniela.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Konrad, for your question. Yes, as you rightly assumed, and I said it as well, the strong reliance on tourism is a huge part of the answer, and also to all the tourist-related industries and activities. It is also the matter of the fact that what is registered is in GDP is not all the income coming from the tourism and tourist-related activities. Not everything is registered, as you may assume. And the other part of the answer, I'll just name these two. There are more, is the structure of Croatian economy and also the resilience that we are not too proud of, having in mind the experiences from the previous crisis. As I said, it took us 10 years to come to the GDP level from the 2008. So that is what we did in 2019, beginning 2019, and now we are back to the level that we had many years ago. In addition, right now we still don't know the estimates of the costs of the Zagreb earthquake, and there is a joke that everything will be fine once. It's maybe half joke. Everything will be fine once Croatian EU presidency finishes. As you know, right now we are in charge of EU presidency. So since it started, everything kind of, not only in Europe, went rogue. And we thought it's only Brexit, but a few months later, you see what happened. So thanks, Konrad.
That's a good joke, huh?
Yeah.
Daniela.
Well, you know, like data are so preliminary at present, so I cannot say whether immigrant entrepreneurs have, you know, to which extent they will be able to access those supports. What I know is that those entrepreneurs that are part of networks such as you know, business associations, and they are part of you know, networks with local consulting and business support services will have a better access because of the complexity, or you know, understanding how to access this type of different supports. So you have financial supports, tax supports, and every region has a different scheme. So you know, also I think that ethnic communities will be supporting each other in this regard. So for instance, we have, I think the Chinese community was very active in responding to the crisis, you know, drawing on their experience with what happened actually in China. So they were the first one to close down everything. They are the first one, you know, to stay compliant to all lockdown measures, and they're first also answering and changing some type of activities so as to respond to the crisis. So I assume the Chinese network will have also a way to inform their entrepreneurs, you know, about how to access these specific set of opportunities. But at present, I really have no data about this, so I cannot have a specific answer for you.
Thank you very much, Daniela.
Okay. Thanks a lot for this. I think with these questions, we have to close the question and answer session. Just to conclude, I would like to thank all the participants, both our fantastic speakers for their very interesting presentations, and to our participants, guests. Almost 50 persons participated in our event, which is I think, a very good result. In case, because I'm not sure, but I think all participants have shared with me their presentations. Are you allowing, if some guests would ask for them, can I share them? Kasia? Okay, so if you would like to have the presentation which was presented by our speakers, just email us, okay? Thanks a lot for being today. I think it was a very good opportunity to meet, very inspiring presentations, and we are looking forward to meet again during our webinar maybe next month. So thanks a lot. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.